What is the value of the #1 overall pick? For the second straight year, the Chicago Bears have the luxury of picking #1 overall in the NFL draft. Around this same time last year, I made a video about potential trade partners for the #1 overall pick. I named the Indianapolis Colts, the Houston Texans, the Raiders, and the Panthers as potential options. And then just 3 weeks later, I released a video predicting that we would trade the pick to the Carolina Panthers. I nailed it. The trade happened less than 10 days later. This year, I'm going to try to emulate that same process by starting with teams that could potentially trade up to the #1 overall pick and what a trade package could look like for each team. I've said all along that this year I do not expect us to add a player like Ryan Poles did last year with DJ Moore. While most of the media are mocking trades of us getting Max Crosby and Jonathan Allen, I choose to focus on realistic trades and narrowing down our actual trade partners. Let's get right into it. Starting off at pick number 2 is the Washington Commanders, Caleb Williams' hometown, the team that also just hired Cliff Kingsbury as their offensive coordinator. For those who don't know, Kingsbury has worked with Patrick Mahomes and spent last year at USC working alongside Caleb Williams. On top of all that, the Commanders have the #2 overall pick, and they could trade up for less than any other team because of that. They also have extra draft picks from trading Montez Sweat and Chase Young. To me, the Washington Commanders just make too much sense, and they are a perfect trade destination if you ask me. The only reason they would potentially not be interested is if they really like 2 quarterbacks in this draft. In that scenario, they can just set at #2 and pick whichever guy falls to them. However, most teams identify one guy they want, and all signs point towards the Commanders wanting Caleb Williams. So what would a trade package with the Commanders look like? A move up from #2 to #1 when looking at the trade value chart is equivalent to just 400 points, which is roughly a second round pick. So to start off, we should at least be able to get a second round pick this year back, pretty much what we traded to get Montez Sweat. But based on what everyone believes, the cost should be higher this year than normal years.
Whatever price you think it's going to take to move up to #1, in your own mind, probably add a little bit of a tax on there. It's one of the most valuable picks in quite some time, given Caleb Williams' stature as a prospect, even if imperfect.
Based on that, I would start the discussions around Washington's first round pick next year and one of their second round picks this year. If Poles could get more than that, it's an absolute home run. But landing a second round pick this year, most likely our pick from that Montez Sweat trade, and then adding another first rounder next year would be a huge win for us. Anything more than that is just bonus. But for the Commanders, it could still be a big win too. They have extra draft picks, and they really want a new QB and face of the franchise. They can actually afford to make this move. It just comes down to will they pull the trigger. It also leaves so many options still on the table for Ryan Poles. He can still trade down from #2 overall. He can stick and take Marvin Harrison Jr., or he can still take a QB in Drake May or Jaden Daniels. But next up is pick #3. The New England Patriots. Mac Jones is their current quarterback, but all signs point to a change here. Bill Belichick's long-standing reign as head coach in New England is over, and a new era of football is going to usher in. That would be best accompanied by a new signal caller. Most people believe there are 3 quarterbacks at the top of the draft board: Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels. Theoretically, the Patriots could stay put and still land at least one of those top 3 players. They could also make a statement and come up to #1 overall. What would a package look like? Well, it would be pretty similar to what the Commanders' package would look like. Again, we'd only be moving down 2 picks here and could most likely still land Marvin Harrison Jr. at pick 3 or the 3rd best quarterback in the draft. I would ask for a second rounder this year and a first next year. If you can get more than that, say an additional 3rd round pick or something, that's perfect. I have no idea if the Patriots want to move up. It depends how they value this year's quarterback class at the end of the day. But now let's get into some teams further down the draft board. At number 6, we have the New York Football Giants. Currently stuck with Daniel Jones for one more season, most people believe that Brian Daboll is looking for his answer at quarterback. Drake May makes too much sense. He has a ton of Josh Allen's qualities, and that would be perfect for Daboll's offense, but Caleb makes a ton of sense too. The Giants made a move up to number 1 overall pick back when Eli Manning came out. Maybe it's time they strike a deal again. What would a package to move down to number 6 look like? It gets interesting here. A move from number 1 to number 6 would almost guarantee we get a 2025 first-round pick in return. The trade value chart here sees a 1,400-point difference. And since we're expecting more than a normal year, I think in a deal this far back, polls could ask for at least 3 first-round picks, meaning number 6 this year, as well as first-rounders in 2025 and 2026. I doubt the Giants would be interested, but if they stay at number 6, they most likely miss out on all 3 of the top quarterbacks. If they want their guy, they will have to pay the price and move up. And for the Bears, moving down this far would mean missing out on Marvin Harrison Jr. and all 3 of the top quarterbacks as well. That means he should ask for as much as he can get. At number 8 with the Falcons, it's pretty much a similar thing. If they want to come up to number 1 overall, it's going to cost them. The Desmond Ridder experience in Atlanta seems all but over. So if the Falcons want to make a big move, it would cost them at least 2 extra first-round picks. You could make a case for putting a package together that is built around first and second-round picks this year and next. That would allow Poles to recoup his second-rounder he traded for Montez Sweat, while also adding an additional first and second-round pick next year. That would give the Bears 2 first-rounders in 2025, as well as 3 second-rounders, and potentially still getting a first-rounder in 2026. Meanwhile, the Bears would still have 2 picks inside the top 10 this year and would be slated to pick at number 8 and number 9 overall. This is the kind of deal that could set the Bears up for the next decade or longer. I would be okay with missing out on Marvin Harrison Jr. if we got a deal like this. But what if a team outside of the top 10 wanted to come up? I see 2 wild card teams at number 12 in the Broncos and number 13 with the Raiders. Some of these teams will land a QB in free agency, but right now all of these teams are still looking for a new quarterback. So with that being said, what would it cost for a team like the Raiders or Broncos at pick 12 or 13 to come up to number 1? I think this deal starts with 3 first-round picks, and then you add in a lot more. At least a second-rounder this year. Moving down this far would require a ton of picks. I would guess at least 5. Start out with 3 first-round picks, add in 2 second-rounders, and then we can talk. I think it's less likely we move down from number 1 this far, though. And then with other teams, I do not expect the Cardinals, the Titans, the Chargers, or the Jets to take a quarterback this year. I think the Cardinals are going to stick with Kyler Murray, the Titans are going to stick with Will Levis, the Chargers have Justin Herbert, and the Jets have Aaron Rodgers. And then I throw the Vikings on the list as well, because I do not see Ryan Poles trading down from number 1 with the Vikings, unless they were to vastly overpay. So I won't really be wasting time talking about those teams, but that leaves 5 or 6 realistic targets that could trade up to number 1 overall. I think it's more likely that he stays within the top 5 picks, top 6 picks, making the Commanders, Patriots, and Giants the 3 most likely teams to trade up. I'd then put the Falcons and Raiders as the 2 long shots. The bottom line is Ryan Poles only needs 2 of these teams to be interested in trading up to start a bidding war, and that's what we want. A bidding war for the number 1 pick. It's possible that more teams are interested as well, but these are the most likely scenarios. It's also common knowledge now that this year's pick is worth more than normal years, as Caleb is seen as a top-notch QB prospect around the league. So according to Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated, Caleb Williams is a once in every 2 to 3 years type quarterback. Not generational, but is a guy that comes out every 2 to 3 years. That would put him in a pretty elite category. That makes the pick more valuable. And then Phil Yates said the exact same thing. Whatever you think the number 1 pick is worth, it's worth more than that. There is a tax this season, meaning that Ryan Poles should be able to get more than what I mocked up today even. That is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to set this Bears franchise up for a decade or longer. What Ryan Poles does with the number 1 pick is the biggest decision in Bears history. If he decides that Caleb Williams is worth picking and passing all of that up, then he's probably the real deal. I trust Ryan Poles more than I have any other GM the Bears have had in my lifetime. I think we are lucky to have him. Having Ian Cunningham around for another year makes it even better. It doesn't mean he's perfect, or either of them are, or that they're going to get every decision correct. But I think they look at things logically, and Ryan Poles looks at the draft in a similar way that I do, if you ask me. And to me, the bottom line is this. Right now, the Washington Commanders just make too much sense. They have an owner that loves to make big splashes. They need a new quarterback. I do not think Sam Howell is the answer. They have the extra draft capital. They also have a pretty good defense and some talent on offense. Caleb Williams is from the area. He's a hometown kid and a great story. They also hired Cliff Kingsbury. Cliff has been on record talking about how eerily similar Caleb is to Patrick Mahomes and how much he loves working with Caleb already. Caleb already knows Kingsbury's offense, or he's at least familiar with the concepts at the very least, and he has a relationship with Kingsbury. It just makes too much sense. Washington, get it done. The ball is in your court. The rest of the media seems pretty dead set that we are trading Justin Fields and taking Caleb Williams. I just don't see it yet. If that happens, I will trust Ryan Poles. But to me, I think Caleb Williams to the Commanders just makes too much sense, and they just need to pony up the picks to get the deal done. This isn't just what I want to happen. It's what I believe is most likely as I sit here today. I think it's also best for the Bears, but there are plenty of options on the table going forward, and nobody knows for sure what's going to happen. But stay tuned, because I'll be here covering it every step of the way. Please remember to hit that like button for me. Stay tuned, and until next time, bear down.